By sunrise, 3 men would try to take the dog away. Only one would stand between Rex and the catch pole. The rain comes sideways across the dock south of Fremantle, cold enough to sting the skin, carried by hard coastal wind and the smell of rusted steel. Midnight settles heavy over the shipping yard. Floodlights buzz overhead like tired insects. Somewhere in the dark, chains knock softly against metal poles. Ethan Walker walks alone between rows of stacked containers, boots splashing through shallow puddles, shoulders stiff beneath a faded charcoal jacket dark with rain at the sleeves. 50 meters ahead, a cargo crane groans over the harbor water. Behind him, the security gate slams shut with a hollow metallic bang that echoes through the yard. "You hear me, mate?" The dock supervisor calls from under the awning near the office. "Don't go near that damn dog." Ethan keeps walking. The supervisor lights a cigarette with trembling fingers, watching the shadows nervously. Thing's been hanging around for weeks. Growls at everyone. Won't eat unless nobody's watching. Probably gone feral. Ethan says nothing. His right hand stays buried in his jacket pocket, thumb brushing absent-mindedly against the old scar near the tattoo on his forearm. A German shepherd inked in black and gray. Ears alert. Eyes alive. The kind of tattoo people get when they're trying not to forget someone. Wind whistles through the narrow lanes between containers. Then he hears it. Not barking. Not growling. Breathing. Slow. Ragged. Almost human. Ethan stops near container C-17. A flickering light above him throws pale yellow flashes across wet concrete. And there, half hidden beneath a loading ramp, he sees the dog for the first time. German shepherd. Large male. Mud-soaked fur darkened by rainwater. One ear bent slightly backward, thin enough that the ribs show beneath the coat. The animal doesn't move when Ethan spots him. Doesn't threaten him either. Just watches. 2 amber eyes glow from the dark like old lanterns. Tired eyes. Waiting eyes. Ethan feels something tighten inside his chest. The dog's collar catches the light for half a second. Military grade. Burnt leather. Frayed edges. Ethan's jaw hardens. "Yeah." The supervisor mutters as he approaches carefully from behind. "Told ya. Weird thing, eh? Won't leave. We tried calling the rescue crew. Every time they come close, he disappears. Then he comes back here before sunrise." Ethan crouches slowly, boots scraping concrete. Rain taps against metal overhead in soft, uneven rhythms. The dog lowers his head slightly, but keeps staring straight at him. No aggression. Just exhaustion. "How long's he been here?" Ethan asks quietly. 3 weeks maybe. Maybe more. The supervisor shrugs. Some trucker reckons he wandered out from the old military depot up the coast. Could be chipped. Could belong to someone. Ethan notices the dog's front paw trembling against the wet ground. Not from anger. From cold. The supervisor exhales smoke into the rain. "Look, mate, best thing you can do is leave him be. Dogs like that don't come back right." Ethan nods faintly, but he doesn't stand up. The dog blinks once. Slowly, Ethan reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small bottle of water. He unscrews the cap carefully. The dog's ears twitch at the sound. "Easy now," Ethan murmurs. His voice is rough from years of silence and salt air. He slides the bottle cap filled with water across the concrete. The German shepherd stares at it for a long moment without moving. Then finally, painfully slowly, he drags himself forward a few centimeters. Ethan notices the limp immediately. Back leg. Bad one. The dog lowers his head and drinks without taking his eyes off Ethan. Rainwater drips from his snout. Somewhere out on the harbor, a ship horn moans low through the fog. Ethan feels the cold deeper now. Not in his skin. In memory. The supervisor shifts uneasily. "You're wasting your time, mate." Ethan keeps watching the dog. The old collar. The disciplined stillness. The way he watches hands before faces. Military training. Definitely. And then Ethan sees it. Stamped faintly into the worn leather beneath the rusted buckle. Rex. The name nearly erased by weather and time. Ethan stops breathing for half a second. The dog looks up at him again. Not begging. Not trusting. Just waiting to see if this man will walk away like all the others. The wind grows louder around the containers. Ethan stares into those exhausted amber eyes while rain runs down his face in thin cold streams. Behind him, the supervisor mutters one final warning. "Whatever happened to that dog? Mate, it's not your problem." Ethan looks at Rex for a long time. Then quietly, almost to himself, he says, "Yeah, That's what they used to say about me too. The supervisor leaves 5 min trucks later, his truck disappearing through the rain, with red tail lights fading behind the wire fence. After that, the harbor feels emptier than before. Bigger too. Ethan stays crouched beneath the loading ramp, while cold wind pushes seawater smell through the yard in slow, heavy waves. Rex finishes the last of the water without lifting his eyes. Careful dog. Trained dog. Ethan knows the difference straight away. Most strays panic or bolt when humans get too close. This one studies distance. Watches hands. Measures breathing. Military habits never really leave. Ethan glances at the old collar again. The leather is cracked from salt and weather, but somebody once polished it properly. Somebody once cared whether this dog came home alive. The thought sits badly in his chest. He stands slowly, knees stiff from old injuries, and pulls his jacket tighter against the cold. I will come back, he says quietly. Rex does not react much, just keeps staring as rainwater drips from the edge of the ramp beside his nose. Ethan turns and walks toward the car park beyond the container rows. His boots echo hollow against wet concrete. 12 steps, maybe 13. Then he stops. The feeling hits him hard enough to steal air from his lungs for a second. Not fear. Worse. Recognition. He closes his eyes briefly. 7 years earlier, another night like this. Another working dog lying injured in the dust outside Kandahar, while helicopters thundered overhead and men shot-trucked conflicting orders through radios full of static. Ethan remembers heat instead of rain, sand instead of salt. But the eyes were the same. Loyal eyes trying to stay awake, waiting for someone to come back. Ethan swallows hard and keeps walking before memory can dig deeper. His truck is parked near the gate beneath a dying floodlight. Mud splashes along the sides from weeks driving coastal roads between temporary security jobs. Inside, the cabin smells faintly of engine oil, coffee, and old leather. No family photos. No clutter. Just a rolled blanket in the back seat and a faded Saint scarf hanging from the mirror because he has never bothered taking it down. Ethan starts the engine. The heater coughs weak, warm air into the cabin while rain rattles softly against the windscreen. He grips the steering wheel but does not drive away. Through the streaked glass, he can still see the narrow lane between containers where Rex is hiding. Waiting. Ethan mutters under his breath, "You are not my problem, mate." The words sound hollow the second they leave his mouth. He drives anyway. Fremantle after midnight feels half asleep beneath the storm. Streetlights shimmer across wet asphalt. A fish and chip shop near the marina closes its shutters while gulls scream somewhere beyond the harbor wall. Ethan passes a late-night gas station, then an empty bus stop where rain blows sideways through cracked plastic panels. The world keeps moving, but his mind stays back at container C-17. By the time he reaches his flat near South Beach, his shoulders ache from tension more than work. The building is old brick from the 1970s, paint peeling near the stairwell, pipes knocking softly behind the walls whenever somebody showers upstairs. Ethan climbs 2 flights carrying nothing except his keys and silence. Inside, the flat feels colder than outside. 1 couch, 1 table, 1 sink full of untouched dishes. The television has not been switched on in weeks. Ethan drops his keys beside the kitchen counter and stands still for a long moment listening to rain against the balcony railing. Then he notices the dog bowl. Empty. Clean. Still sitting beside the fridge where it has been for years. Ethan looks away immediately. He heads into the bathroom and splashes water across his face. The mirror above the sink catches him under harsh yellow light. 38 years old. Lines around the eyes deeper than they should be. Light stubble turning unevenly gray near the jaw. The tattoo on his right forearm disappears beneath droplets of water. German Shepherd profile. Alert ears. Same design as before. Same dog. Murphy. Ethan presses both hands against the sink. Should have gone back for you, he whispers. His voice barely exists above the rain outside. He has not said the name aloud in almost a year. Sleep does not come easy after that. It never really does. Ethan lies awake on top of the sheets while the clock glows 2:14 in pale blue numbers beside the bed. Pipes creak. Wind rattles the balcony door. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees Rex beneath the loading ramp. Thin ribs. Wet fur. Waiting. At 3:02, he gives up pretending. He sits on the edge of the bed and rubs both hands over his face. Damn it. 20 min trucks later, he is back in the truck driving through rain again. The city feels even quieter now. Traffic lights changing for nobody. Dark shop fronts reflecting stormwater. Somewhere near the docks, thunder rolls low across the ocean. Ethan stops at an all-night petrol station and walks inside under flickering fluorescent lights. The teenage cashier barely looks up from his phone. Ethan grabs bottled water, 2 tins of dog food, antiseptic spray, and an old wool blanket from the camping shelf near the back wall. Got a dog? The cashier asks casually while scanning the items. Ethan hesitates. Maybe. The kid nods like that answer somehow makes sense at 4 in the morning. 10 min trucks later, Ethan pulls back into the harbor yard. Rain still falls steady over the containers. Wind carries the smell of diesel and seawater through the darkness. The loading ramp comes into view beneath the flickering floodlight. Empty. Ethan steps out fast, boots splashing hard against puddles now. Rex. His voice disappears into the wind. No movement. No eyes in the dark. For one terrible second, Ethan feels his stomach drop. Then somewhere deeper in the container maze, barely audible beneath the storm, comes the sound of slow, uneven footsteps scraping against wet concrete. The sound comes again. Slow. Uneven. Like claws dragging over soaked concrete somewhere beyond the shipping lanes. Ethan shuts the truck door quietly and listens beneath. The storm. Wind pushes cold rain sideways through the narrow gaps between containers, carrying the deep metallic smell of seawater and diesel fuel. Somewhere high above, loose cables knock against a steel beam with hollow rhythmic taps. Rex is moving. Barely. Ethan grabs the blanket and tins from the passenger seat and starts toward the sound. His boots splash through puddles reflecting broken strips of yellow floodlight. Container walls rise around him like dark cliffs, stacked 3 high, blocking most of the wind but trapping the cold. Every few meters, faded shipping logos appear through the rain. Singapore. Osaka. Auckland. Places that mean nothing tonight. Rex, Ethan calls softly again. No answer. Only breathing. Closer now. He turns a corner between 2 rusted containers and finally spots movement near the far fence line. The German Shepherd stands under a leaning security light beside an abandoned forklift. Thin body trembling. One back leg barely touching the ground. Water streams from his fur in silver lines. But it is not the injury that stops Ethan cold. It is the way Rex is standing. Sideways. Protective posture. Between Ethan and something behind him. Ethan narrows his eyes. Beneath the forklift, curled against the dry patch near the engine housing, lies a small bundle of soaked fabric. At first he thinks it is rubbish blown in from the harbor. Then the bundle moves. Tiny kitten. Gray fur matted from rain. Hardly bigger than a work boot. Rex glances back toward it for only half a second before returning his eyes to Ethan. Guarding it. Ethan exhales slowly through his nose. You have got to be kidding me. The dog does not move. Rainwater drips steadily from his muzzle, while the kitten lets out a weak, scratchy cry beneath the forklift. Ethan crouches carefully, lowering himself into the wet. Easy, mate. Rex watches every movement. Alert but exhausted. Ethan notices fresh mud along the dog's chest and paws. He has been moving around recently despite the injury. Looking for shelter maybe. Looking for food. Or maybe protecting the tiny animal behind him. Ethan slowly places one of the unopened tins on the ground between them. The metal clicks softly against concrete. Rex flinches slightly at the sound, but does not retreat. Ethan pulls the ring tab carefully. The smell of meat cuts through the damp salt air almost instantly. Rex's ears twitch. Hunger flashes across his face before discipline buries it again. Ethan has seen that look before too. Military dogs train not to eat until ordered, even starving ones. Nobody is giving you commands anymore. Ethan murmurs quietly. You can eat. Rex stares at him for a long moment. Then slowly, painfully slowly, he limps forward 2 cautious steps. Ethan stays perfectly still. Rain trickles down the back of his neck beneath the collar of his jacket. The German Shepherd lowers his head toward the tin, but pauses halfway there, eyes flicking toward Ethan's right arm. Toward the tattoo. Ethan notices it immediately. The dog freezes on that image for nearly 3 full seconds. Then something changes. Not trust exactly. Something older. Familiarity. Rex lowers his head and finally begins eating. Fast at first, then slower once his body realizes the food is real. Ethan feels tension loosen slightly inside his chest. The kitten cries again beneath the forklift. Rex immediately stops eating and turns his head back toward the sound. Ethan shakes his head in disbelief. You are half dead and still babysitting somebody. The rain begins easing into a softer drizzle overhead. Somewhere beyond the harbor wall, thunder rolls farther out to sea now. Ethan carefully crawls closer to the forklift and reaches under the rusted frame. The kitten is cold but alive, tiny body trembling against his palm. Hey there, little battler, he whispers. Rex watches closely but does not interfere. Ethan wraps the kitten gently inside part of the wool blanket and places it against his chest beneath the jacket for warmth. Then he looks back at the dog. Up close now, the injuries are easier to see. Old scars beneath the wet fur. Healing cuts around the shoulders. One raw patch near the back leg where skin has rubbed thin against the collar strap. Not street injuries. Not random. Structured damage. Repeated damage. Ethan's expression darkens slightly. Who did this to you? Rex keeps eating but more slowly now. Tired eyes never fully leaving Ethan's face. The kind of eyes that expect pain after kindness. Ethan knows those eyes too well. A sharp whistle suddenly cuts through the container yard from somewhere near the main gate. Rex jerks instantly. The reaction is immediate and terrifyingly trained. Body stiff. Head low. Breathing shallow. Ethan turns toward the sound. Two dock security workers appear in the distance, carrying flashlights through the rain. One points toward them. There he is. Rex backs away at once, panic flooding his movements despite exhaustion. Ethan rises quickly. Easy. One of the guards approaches fast, boots splashing hard through puddles. Mate, stand clear from the dock. The second guard lifts a long catch pole from beside the fence. Animal control said if we spot him again, we bring him in tonight. Rex lets out a low warning growl, but keeps retreating backward toward the shadows. Fear now overpowering hunger. Ethan steps slightly in front of him without thinking. He is injured. Exactly why we are taking him, the older guard replies. Poor thing has been limping around here for weeks. The younger one swings the flashlight beam toward Rex's face. The dog instantly recoils from the light, ears flattening hard against his skull. Ethan notices the reaction immediately. Not aggression. Conditioning. Somebody taught this dog to fear certain things. Turn the light down, Ethan says sharply. The guard frowns. Sorry, I said turn it down. Rain drips from Ethan's hair onto the concrete, while tension settles thick between the containers. Behind him, Rex presses closer to the shadows near the forklift, chest rising unevenly. The kitten shifts weakly beneath Ethan's jacket. The older guard sighs heavily. Look, mate, we are not trying to hurt him. But dogs like this are unpredictable. Ethan glances back at Rex. The German Shepherd is staring directly at him again. Waiting. Same exhausted eyes. Same silent question. Are you leaving too? Ethan looks back at the guards and quietly says, nobody touches him tonight. Rain falls softer now, but the cold settles deeper into the harbor yard, creeping through fabric and skin like seawater finding cracks in old timber. Ethan stands between the guards and the German Shepherd while wind moves slowly through the rows of containers behind them. One flashlight beam cuts across puddles near his boots before lowering slightly toward the ground. The older guard studies Ethan with tired eyes. Mate, animal control already logged complaints about this dog. We are trying to help. Ethan glances back over his shoulder. Rex remains near the forklift, body low, ears pinned halfway back. Not aggressive, just trapped between fear and exhaustion. The tiny kitten beneath Ethan's jacket lets out a faint squeak. The younger guard notices the movement. What is that? Ethan shifts the blanket slightly. Kitten. Both guards stare for a second. Then the older one exhales quietly through his nose. Good Lord. Behind Ethan, Rex slowly lowers himself onto the wet concrete, limping legs stretched awkwardly to one side. The movement is careful, controlled. Like even pain has rules now. Ethan notices how the dog keeps his eyes on the catch pole the younger guard is holding. Not the man. The pole. Recognition flashes through the animal every time the metal shifts beneath the floodlights. Ethan feels anger rise slowly in his chest. Calm anger. The dangerous kind. Put that thing away, he says. It is stressing him. Mate, if he bolts, we need it. He is not going to bolt. Almost as if trying to prove him wrong, Rex suddenly pushes himself upright again. His breathing quickens. One step backward, then another. The younger guard instinctively lifts the pole slightly. Rex flinches hard at the motion and nearly slips against the wet concrete. Ethan immediately raises one hand. Easy, easy. His voice drops lower now. Steadier. Military calm. The same tone he used years ago during extractions and panic drills when everything threatened to collapse at once. Rex freezes. Rainwater drips from the dog's chin while his chest rises unevenly. Ethan slowly crouches halfway without taking his eyes off him. Nobody is taking you anywhere tonight. Silence settles over the container lane except for distant harbor waves striking pylons in slow hollow booms. The older guard finally lowers his flashlight completely. You know dogs? Ethan gives a small shrug. Enough. Because this one has scared half the dock workers around here. Ethan studies Rex carefully before answering. Scared dogs usually scare people first. The younger guard looks uncertain now. So what do we do? Ethan glances toward the truck parked near the gate, then back toward Rex. The dog sways slightly where he stands. Too weak to stay upright much longer. I take him to a vet in the morning. You serious? Yeah. Mate, that dog could weigh 40 kilos easy. Ethan almost smiles for the first time all night. He used to weigh more than that. The older guard notices the military collar again beneath the wet fur. Army dog. Ethan nods once. Looks like it. You reckon somebody dumped him? Ethan looks at the scars around Rex's shoulders. The worn paws. The way he studies exits before faces. I reckon somebody stopped coming back for him. Nobody speaks after that. The wind carries the smell of rain-soaked timber from the nearby docks, while somewhere in the darkness a buoy bell rings softly through the fog. Finally, the older guard gestures toward the catch pole. Leave it in the truck, Darren. The younger guard hesitates before obeying. Rex watches every movement until the pole disappears completely. Only then does his posture loosen slightly. Ethan notices immediately. So does the older guard. Poor guy, the man murmurs under his breath. Ethan slowly tears open the second tin of dog food and places it closer this time. Barely 2 meters away. Rex stares at him carefully, then limps forward again, slower now, every movement heavy with pain and caution. Up close beneath the floodlight, Ethan can see how badly the dog has deteriorated. Fur thinning near the ribs. Infection swelling around the injured hind leg. Tiny salt crystals caught in the coat from weeks near the ocean wind. But the eyes remain sharp. Intelligent. Present. The younger guard shakes his head quietly. How is he even still alive out here? Ethan watches Rex eat in small, controlled bites. Some things survive longer than they should. The words hang in the cold air longer than intended. The older guard studies Ethan for a moment as though hearing something hidden underneath the sentence. You ex-military? Ethan does not answer straight away. Something like that. Another silence. Then the older guard nods toward the kitten hidden beneath the blanket. You taking that one too? Ethan looks down as a tiny paw pushes weakly against the fabric near his chest. Looks like it. For the first time all night, the younger guard laughs softly. Tired laugh. Human laugh. Mate, you came here for one dog, and now you are running a rescue shelter. Ethan glances back toward Rex again. The German shepherd has finished eating, but still refuses to come fully into the open. He remains partly hidden beside the forklift, like some part of him still believes visibility equals danger. Ethan recognizes that feeling too. The rain finally begins easing into mist. Beyond the docks, faint pale color touches the horizon over the Indian Ocean. Dawn coming slowly. The older guard checks his watch and sighs. All right, we will tell animal control we did not locate him tonight. Ethan nods quietly. Appreciate it. Do not make me regret it, mate. The two guards start walking back through the container rows, boots splashing softly against puddles. Halfway down the lane, the older one pauses and looks back. There is an emergency vet on Hampton Road. Opens at 6. Ethan gives a small wave without turning fully around. Then the guards disappear into the rain and darkness beyond the floodlights. Silence returns. Just Ethan, the dog, the kitten, and the sea breathing somewhere beyond the steel walls of the harbor. Ethan crouches again carefully. Looks like it is just us now. Rex stares at him for a long moment without moving. Then slowly, almost painfully, the German shepherd takes 3 uneven steps forward out of the shadows. Close enough now that Ethan can hear his breathing clearly. Close enough to smell wet fur, seawater, an old antiseptic trapped in the coat beneath the rain. Ethan gently places the wool blanket on the ground between them. Rex lowers his nose toward it cautiously. Then his eyes lift again toward Ethan's tattoo. The dog freezes there once more, watching the inked German Shepherd on Ethan's forearm as if trying to remember something buried very far away. Ethan feels a strange chill move through him that has nothing to do with weather. You knew someone like him, did you? Rex blinks slowly. Then, for the first time, the German Shepherd steps close enough for Ethan to touch him. For a moment, neither of them moves. Rain ticks softly against the forklift beside them while pale dawn light slowly spreads across the harbor yard in washed-out shades of blue and silver. Ethan keeps his hand low near his knee, palm open, fingers still. The German Shepherd stands less than an arm's length away now, breathing unevenly through exhaustion. Up close, the dog looks older than before. Not by years. By wear. Like life has been pressing against him for too long. Ethan can smell salt trapped deep in the coat beneath the rainwater. Antiseptic too. Faint. Old. Somebody treated injuries once. Somebody tried before disappearing. Rex lowers his nose cautiously toward Ethan's hand. One slow inhale. Then another. Ethan feels warm breath against his skin. The dog's eyes flick upward again toward the tattoo on his forearm. Murphy staring back in faded black ink beneath beads of rain. Something flickers across Rex's face. Recognition, maybe. Or memory tangled with instinct. Ethan swallows quietly. You miss someone too, do you? The German Shepherd does not retreat this time. Instead, very slowly, he leans forward just enough for the side of his muzzle to brush against Ethan's knuckles. Tiny contact. Barely there. But it lands harder inside Ethan than he expects. Because broken things do not trust gently. They trust carefully. And careful trust means they still want to believe. Ethan feels his chest tighten again. The kitten shifts weakly beneath his jacket, tiny heartbeat fluttering against his ribs. Rex notices immediately and tilts his head slightly toward the movement. Protective again. Ethan shakes his head softly. You found yourself a little mate, huh? Somewhere beyond the shipping yard, gulls begin screaming over the water as fishing boats start engines near the marina. Morning is coming. Real morning. The kind that exposes things. People prefer hidden at night. Ethan knows he cannot leave Rex here once daylight workers arrive. Too many forklifts. Too many frightened people. Too many chances for someone to make a decision they cannot take back. He glances toward the truck parked near the gate. Then back at the dog. All right, he murmurs quietly. Here's the problem. Rex blinks slowly. You look like you hate cages. One ear twitches faintly. And I do not reckon you trust cars either. Ethan carefully reaches into his pocket and pulls out the last remaining bottle of water. Rex watches every movement, but stays still. The dog's breathing sounds rough now. Tired beyond tired. Ethan unscrews the cap and wets part of the wool blanket before gently offering it closer. Rex hesitates only a second before licking the damp fabric. Dry tongue. Dehydrated. Ethan studies the injured hind leg more carefully now that the panic has settled. Swollen around the joint. Fur matted unevenly from infection and seawater. The limp is worse than he first thought. Maybe tendon damage. Maybe older. Rex shifts his weight slightly and winces almost invisibly. Most people would miss it. Ethan does not. That bad, eh? The dog lowers himself slowly onto the concrete beside the blanket at last. Not surrendering. Conserving strength. Ethan notices another detail then. Tiny faded numbers tattooed inside the ear. Military identification. Old style. Real. His stomach tightens. Definitely service-trained. Rex closes his eyes for half a second, as if even sitting upright costs effort now. Ethan carefully tears a strip from the edge of the wool blanket and wets it with clean water before moving his hand slowly toward the injured leg. I am going to have a look, mate. The second Ethan's fingers near the swollen area, Rex stiffens instantly. Not aggressive. Terrified. Ethan freezes immediately. The reaction is too sharp, too rehearsed. Like pain always followed human hands before this moment. Easy, Ethan whispers. Easy. Nobody is hurting you. Rex's breathing quickens. Ears flattening again. Ethan slowly pulls his hand back and waits. No pressure. No force. Just patience. The same thing Murphy once needed after Loud nights overseas. The same thing Ethan himself still needed sometimes without admitting it. Min trucks pass quietly beneath the dripping steel structures of the dockyard. Eventually, Rex's breathing slows again. Ethan reaches for the unopened antiseptic spray near his boot, but pauses when he notices the dog staring at the bottle. Another reaction. Tiny but immediate. Fear again. Not of the object itself. Of what it means. Ethan slowly sets it back down unopened. Right, he says softly. No sprays. He looks around the deserted harbor lane. Rusted chains swaying gently. Rainwater running beneath pallets towards storm drains. Far above, dawn light turning the low clouds pale gray. The whole world feels suspended for one strange, quiet moment between night and day. Ethan realizes suddenly he has not felt calm around another living thing in years. Not real calm. Not the guarded version he carries through pubs and job sites and crowded streets. Actual calm. Rex lowers his head onto the edge of the blanket at last, eyes half closed, but still watching Ethan through exhaustion. The kitten lets out another tiny cry beneath the jacket. Ethan carefully kneels down beside the dog. You know, he murmurs, this is how trouble starts. One corner of his mouth almost lifts. Almost. Then he notices something partly hidden beneath Rex's collar. Ethan gently shifts the wet leather enough to see underneath. There, tangled against the fur, hangs a small metal tag darkened by rust and seawater. Not military issue. Hand engraved. Ethan wipes mud away carefully with his thumb. The letters appear slowly beneath the grime. For bravery and service. Ethan stares at the tag in silence. The metal shakes faintly from the dog's breathing. Somebody gave him this. Somebody loved him enough to make it personal. Not just equipment. Not just a working animal. Ethan feels a strange heaviness settle behind his ribs. What happened to you? He whispers again. Rex opens his eyes slightly at the sound of Ethan's voice. Then something unexpected happens. The German Shepherd slowly shifts closer across the wet concrete until the side of his body rests lightly against Ethan's knee. Warm weight. Careful. Weight. Trust given in centimeters instead of words. Ethan stops breathing for a second. Because some moments arrive quietly enough to break your heart without making a sound. Wind moves through the harbor again, carrying the smell of seawater and morning rain. Somewhere nearby, a church bell rings 6 slow times across Fremantle. Rex closes his eyes fully for the first time since Ethan met him. Not because he feels safe completely. Just safe enough to rest for one min truck beside someone who did not walk away. The church bell fades into the wet morning air while Ethan stays kneeling beside the German Shepherd beneath the rusted forklift shelter. Dawn spreads slowly across the harbor now, turning puddles pale silver between the containers. The storm has nearly passed, leaving only drifting mist and the steady distant sound of waves hitting the seawall. Rex keeps his eyes closed, head resting against the edge of the wool blanket beside Ethan's knee. Not asleep completely, just exhausted enough to stop fighting for a few min trucks. Ethan looks down at the dog and feels something unfamiliar settling inside his chest. Responsibility. Dangerous thing. The kitten squirms weakly beneath his jacket again, tiny claws catching against the fabric near his ribs. Ethan carefully opens the jacket slightly to check on it. Small gray face. Half-open eyes. Still alive. Barely. You two are a pair, he murmurs. Rex opens one eye at the sound of Ethan's voice. Watching again. Always watching. Ethan slowly rises to his feet, knees stiff from the cold concrete. The movement immediately wakes Rex fully. The dog struggles upright at once despite the pain in his leg. Instinct. Never let the human leave first. Ethan notices it straight away. Easy, mate. I am not disappearing. Rex's breathing remains shallow but steadies slightly when Ethan stays where he is. The harbor begins waking around them now. Somewhere beyond the fence line, a truck engine rumbles to life. Metal chains drag across concrete in the distance. Human voices echo faintly through the dockyard. Time is running out. Ethan grabs the unopened antiseptic bottle and food tins from the ground before glancing toward the truck near the gate. All right, he says quietly. We need to move before people start asking questions. Rex stares toward the open lane between containers. Tension immediately returns to his body. Escape Rotrix. Threat assessment. Ethan recognizes the shift. No cages, he says softly. No ropes. Just the car. The German Shepherd watches him carefully as if trying to decide whether those words belong to truth or memory. Ethan takes 2 slow steps backward toward the truck. Come on. Rex does not follow immediately. He glances once toward the harbor entrance behind them. Freedom. Then toward Ethan. Choice. It takes nearly 30 seconds before the dog finally limps forward one careful step. Then another. Ethan feels relief move through him so suddenly it almost hurts. That is it. They move slowly through the container yard together. Not beside each other exactly. More like 2 wounded things traveling in the same direction because neither one knows where else to go. Rex keeps several meters between them the entire time, limping heavily but refusing to stop. Every loud sound makes his ears twitch sharply. Forklift alarms. Clanging metal. Sudden voices carried by wind. At one point a shipping container door slams somewhere nearby and Rex freezes completely, chest heaving. Ethan immediately stops walking too. No pressure. No commands. Just waiting. Eventually the dog moves again. By the time they reach the truck, pale orange sunlight has begun pushing through the clouds over the Indian Ocean. The rain-soaked city beyond the docks glows softly beneath early morning haze. Ethan opens the passenger door carefully. Here is where things get complicated. Rex studies the vehicle from a distance. No movement. Ethan crouches and places the wool blanket across the seat. You can smell the coffee stains and poor life decisions later. Nothing. Ethan sighs quietly and leans against the open door. You know, Murphy hated cars too. The name hangs in the cold morning air. Rex's ears twitch slightly at the softness in Ethan's voice. Ethan stares past the harbor fence for a moment, eyes distant now. First deployment together, he used to throw up every time the transport truck hit rough roads. A faint tired smile touches Ethan's face before disappearing again. Meanest looking dog in the unit. Could barely survive a speed bump. Rex watches him closely. Not understanding words maybe, but understanding tone. Loss has its own language. Eventually Ethan pats the blanket lightly. Come on, mate. I am trying to save your miserable backside here. Another long silence. Then Rex slowly approaches the open door. Limping worse now. Closer than before. Ethan notices the dog trembling faintly from exhaustion. Up close, he can also see dried salt around the eyes and tiny healed scars near the muzzle. Old injuries layered over older ones. The kind that builds slowly over time when nobody notices suffering early enough. Rex reaches the door and stops. His nose touches the edge of the seat cautiously. Ethan stays completely still. Then the dog suddenly recoils backward at the sound of a reversing alarm echoing across the dockyard. Panic flashes through him fast and hard. Rex stumbles sideways, breathing sharply now, eyes wide with fear. Ethan lowers his voice immediately. Hey, look at me. Rex keeps scanning the yard frantically. Ethan gently taps his own chest once. Rex. The dog's eyes snap toward him at the sound of his name. Good. Ethan nods slowly. Stay with me. Another alarm sounds somewhere farther away but quieter this time. Rex remains tense but no longer backing away. Ethan carefully reaches into the truck and pulls out the old saint's scarf hanging from the mirror. He folds it once and places it gently on the passenger seat beside the blanket. Here. Smells like me now. Unfortunately. Rex stares at the scarf for several seconds. Then something shifts again inside the exhausted animal. Slowly, painfully, he places both front paws onto the seat. Ethan holds his breath without meaning to. Rex hesitates one final moment before climbing into the truck. The movement nearly collapses his injured leg beneath him, but he manages it, settling awkwardly onto the blanket with visible effort. The second he lies down, the dog releases a deep shaking breath Ethan suspects he has been holding for weeks. Ethan quietly closes the passenger door halfway without locking it. Good boy, he whispers before he can stop himself. The words hit him harder than expected, because he has not said them in years. Rex lowers his head slowly against the wool blanket. Eyes still alert, but softer now. Trust arriving in pieces. Ethan walks around to the driver's side and pauses before getting in. Through the windscreen, he can see the first proper sunlight touching the harbor cranes beyond the fence line. Gold light spreading across cold steel. New day beginning whether people are ready or not. Then movement catches his eye near the security office. The older dock guard from earlier stands beneath the awning holding a takeaway coffee. He notices Ethan and the dog inside the truck. Instead of speaking, the man simply lifts the coffee slightly in quiet understanding. Ethan nods once in return. No words needed. He climbs into the driver's seat and starts the engine. Rex flinches faintly at the vibration, but stays inside. Ethan grips the steering wheel while warm air slowly begins pushing through the vents. For a long moment, neither of them moves. Then Ethan glances toward the exhausted German shepherd beside him and says quietly, "All right, mate. Let us see if the world still has room for strays." The truck rolls slowly out of the harbor while morning spreads across Fremantle in quiet shades of gold and gray. Rainwater glistens along the roads. Cafes begin lifting shutters near the marina. Cyclists pass wrapped in jackets against the cold sea wind. The city is waking up without knowing that one broken dog is curled on a faded wool blanket inside an old truck, trying very hard to stay conscious. Ethan drives with one hand resting loosely on the steering wheel while warm air fills the cabin. Beside him, Rex lies low against the seat, eyes half open, body tense every time another vehicle passes too close. Not panic anymore. Anticipation. Like life taught him that engines usually meant orders or separation. Ethan notices the dog watching every intersection through the window reflections. "You can relax," he says quietly. "Nobody is chasing you." Rex blinks once, but does not lower his guard completely. The kitten tucked. Inside, Ethan's jacket finally lets out a stronger little squeak. Tiny sound. Fragile sound. Rex lifts his head immediately despite exhaustion, ears twitching toward Ethan's chest. Protective again. Ethan shakes his head softly. "You are unbelievable, mate." They stop at a red light near South Terrace. A young mother pushing a pram crosses in front of the truck while holding a little boy by the hand. The child notices Rex through the passenger window and points excitedly. "Mom, look. Big doggy." Rex immediately lowers his head away from the glass. Avoiding attention, Ethan feels something twist inside him at the sight. No animal should look ashamed of being seen. The light changes green. Ethan drives on. Hampton Road Veterinary Clinic sits between a bakery and a small pharmacy beneath weathered brick awnings still dripping rainwater. The open sign flickers weakly in the front window. Ethan parks along the curb and switches off the engine. For a moment, silence fills the cabin except for the soft ticking of cooling metal. Rex lifts his head slowly and looks at the building. The smell reaches him before anything else. Antiseptic. Other animals. Fear. The German shepherd stiffens instantly. Ethan notices the change. "Yeah," he murmurs. "Not exactly a luxury resort." He steps out into the cold morning air and walks around to the passenger side carefully. The second the door opens, Rex tries pushing himself upright too fast. Pain shoots through the injured leg, and the dog nearly collapses against the seat. Ethan immediately steadies his voice. "Easy. No sudden movements. No grabbing." Rex breathes hard through his nose, but stays inside the truck. Ethan glances toward the clinic door where a woman in green scrubs is unlocking the entrance. Early 40s maybe. Dark hair tied back. Tired but kind eyes. She notices the dog instantly. "Oh my God," she whispers under her breath before hurrying over. "What happened to him?" Ethan steps aside slightly so she can see better. "Found him near the docks." The woman kneels slowly near the open door without reaching inside. Smart. Experienced. Rex watches her carefully, but does not growl. "Poor darling," she says softly. "How long? Has he been injured?" Ethan shakes his head. "No idea." The woman studies the military collar beneath the wet fur, and her expression changes slightly. "Service dog? Looks that way." She nods slowly before looking back at Rex. "Can you get him inside?" Ethan glances at the German shepherd. "Working on that part." The woman notices the kitten moving beneath Ethan's jacket and blinks in confusion. "Is that a kitten?" Ethan exhales quietly. Long story. 10 min trucks later, they manage to guide Rex through the clinic entrance using patience, pieces of roast chicken, and complete silence. No leash. No force. Just Ethan walking slowly ahead, while Rex follows several cautious steps behind. Every polished floor tile makes the dog nervous. Every metallic sound from the treatment rooms tightens his posture. But he keeps moving because Ethan keeps moving. The waiting room smells like disinfectant, coffee, and damp fur. A sleepy Labrador lifts its head from a corner chair as they enter. Rex freezes immediately at the sight of another dog. Not aggression. Assessment. The Labrador simply wags its tail once before resting its chin back on its owner's shoe. Rex slowly relaxes again. The woman in scrubs smiles faintly. "See? Not every place wants something from you. She leads them into a quiet examination room near the back of the clinic. Soft lighting, pale blue walls, gentle music playing somewhere distant near reception. Rex limps inside cautiously while Ethan remains close enough to reassure without crowding him. The moment the door closes behind them, the German shepherd's legs suddenly buckle beneath him. Exhaustion finally winning. Ethan drops beside him instantly. Hey. Rex tries to rise again out of instinct, but cannot fully manage it this time. His breathing grows rougher. The veterinarian kneels carefully near the injured leg without touching yet. He is running on adrenaline and loyalty at this point, she says quietly. Not much else. Ethan strokes one hand slowly along the side of Rex's neck for the first time. The dog flinches faintly at the contact before going still beneath his palm. Warm fur, trembling muscles, trust fighting fear inch by inch. You are. All right, Ethan murmurs. The veterinarian studies Ethan briefly while preparing clean towels nearby. He trusts you. Ethan almost laughs at that. Barely. More than you realize. Rex lifts his tired eyes toward Ethan's face again. Same look from the harbor. Same silent question underneath it. Are you staying? Ethan feels the weight of it settle deep in his chest. Because leaving has always been easier for him than staying. Jobs, cities, relationships, even memories. Keep moving long enough and pain cannot unpack properly. But this dog keeps looking at him like staying matters. The veterinarian gently examines the swollen hind leg while speaking softly the entire time. Rex stiffens but does not snap. There is infection, she says carefully. An old trauma around the joint. He has been compensating on this leg for quite a while. Ethan notices several faded scars beneath the fur now that the lighting is better. Thin parallel marks near the shoulder. Older healed wounds along the ribs. Not street injuries. Patterned injuries. His jaw tightens quietly. The veterinarian notices too. Somebody did not take proper care of him. Ethan says nothing. Outside the treatment room window, morning sunlight finally breaks fully through the clouds, spilling warm gold across the wet pavement outside the clinic. People walk past carrying takeaway coffees. Ordinary lives continuing. Inside the little examination room, Rex slowly lowers his head against Ethan's boot and finally closes his eyes again. The movement is small, but deliberate. Choosing contact. Choosing closeness. Ethan looks down at the exhausted German shepherd resting against him and feels something dangerous begin happening inside his chest. Hope. Hope feels dangerous because Ethan remembers what happens when it disappears. He sits on the floor beside the examination table while morning light warms the edges of the small treatment room. Rex remains curled near his boots, exhausted body finally still for the first time since the harbor. The German shepherd's breathing is slower now, though every few breaths catch faintly with discomfort. The veterinarian moves quietly around the room preparing fluids and antibiotics while soft music drifts from reception beyond the hallway. Somewhere nearby a kettle clicks on. Ordinary sounds. Gentle sounds. The kind that make broken things realize how long they have lived without peace. Ethan strokes one hand slowly along Rex's neck again. Less hesitation this time. The dog no longer flinches away from every touch. He simply watches Ethan through tired amber eyes as if trying to understand why kindness has not disappeared yet. The veterinarian kneels beside them holding a scanner wand. Let us see if his microchip still works. Rex stiffens faintly when the scanner passes near his shoulder but stays where he is. The machine emits a soft beep almost immediately. The veterinarian blinks. Well, that is promising. She walks to the trucker near the counter and begins typing. Ethan watches Rex instead. The dog's eyes keep drifting shut before forcing themselves open again. Fighting sleep. Fighting vulnerability. Fighting the instinct that says resting near people is dangerous. You can sleep, Ethan murmurs quietly. Nobody here is going to hurt you. Rex studies him for one long moment. Then finally, slowly, his head lowers fully against Ethan's boot again. The veterinarian's typing suddenly stops. Silence hangs in the room for 2 seconds too long. Ethan looks up immediately. What is it? The woman stares at the monitor. This chip registration is strange. Ethan rises slowly from the floor. How strange. She hesitates before turning the screen slightly toward him. Most of the ownership fields are blank. No address. No active contact details. Just an old registration code and one line beneath it. Service status, retired. Ethan feels his chest tighten. Retired from what? It does not say. The veterinarian scrolls lower. But the registration origin is linked to a private military contractor. Ethan's jaw hardens almost invisibly. The woman notices. You know the type? Ethan nods faintly. Yeah. Companies that use dogs like tools. Efficient when useful. Forgotten when inconvenient. He has seen enough of that world to recognize the smell of it. Rex shifts weakly on the floor as if sensing tension in the room. Ethan immediately lowers his hand back to the dog's shoulder. Easy. The veterinarian keeps reading quietly. No listed handler either. That part lands harder than Ethan expects. No handler. No name attached to him. Like nobody ever mattered enough to write down. He looks at the small engraved tag hanging beneath Rex's collar again. For bravery and service. Somebody cared once. Somebody enough to engrave metal by hand. But whoever they were, they are gone now. The veterinarian kneels beside Rex again, expression gentler this time. I need to clean the infection properly before it spreads further. Ethan notices the careful way she phrases things around fear instead of pain. Good vet. Smart vet. Will he need sedation? He asks quietly. Maybe mild sedation if he lets us near the leg. Ethan looks down at the dog. Rex's eyes are already open again, fixed on the tray of instruments near the counter. Not aggressive, just alert. Tracking exits. Tracking risks. He does not like metal sounds, Ethan says. Or sprays. The veterinarian nods thoughtfully. Trauma memory. She lowers her voice even more. Animals remember patterns long after people think they should. Ethan almost says humans do too, but the words stay trapped somewhere behind his ribs instead. The kitten suddenly squeaks from the towel-lined laundry basket beside the heater where a nurse placed it earlier. Instantly, Rex lifts his head despite exhaustion. Ethan cannot help the small, tired laugh escaping him. Mate, you are running on fumes and still checking on everybody else. One of the nurses smiles softly from the doorway. He is protective. Ethan watches Rex carefully. No, he says quietly. He is scared of losing things. The room falls silent after that because everybody understands the difference. Outside the clinic window, sunlight brightens the wet pavement. Customers begin arriving with healthy pets and ordinary concerns. A woman carrying a cockatoo in a travel cage. An old man with a sleepy cattle dog. Life continuing. But inside the treatment room, time feels slower somehow. Softer. The veterinarian finally crouches beside Rex with a folded towel soaked in warm water. All right, handsome, she murmurs gently. Let us try this together. She moves carefully toward the injured leg. The second the towel touches the swollen fur, Rex tenses hard. Not snapping, not growling, just bracing himself like something bad always follows discomfort. Ethan immediately kneels beside him again. Hey. Rex's breathing quickens. Ethan places one steady hand near the dog's chest. Look at me. The German shepherd's eyes lock onto his instantly. Ethan keeps his voice low and calm. You are all right. Stay here with me. The veterinarian continues carefully cleaning around the injury while Ethan talks quietly the entire time. Not commands. Just presence. Good boy. That is it. Easy now. Slowly the tension leaves Rex's body centimeter by centimeter. Trembling remains. Fear remains. But he stops fighting the touch. The veterinarian exhales softly in surprise. I have never seen him before today. Ethan says quietly, almost to himself. Feels like I have known him years. The woman glances at the tattoo on Ethan's forearm. The inked German shepherd dark beneath the morning light. Maybe grief recognizes itself. Ethan looks away toward the window after that, because some sentences hit too close to old wounds. The treatment continues slowly. Warm towels. Antibiotics. Gentle hands. No force. Every time Rex starts drifting toward panic, Ethan steadies him with his voice alone. And little by little, the dog begins listening to it more than fear. Eventually, the veterinarian leans back with a relieved breath. There. She removes her gloves carefully. Infection is serious, but manageable if he keeps eating and resting. Ethan strokes one hand behind Rex's ear without thinking now. Familiar motion. Old memory. The German shepherd closes his eyes briefly beneath the touch. What happens if he does not? He asks quietly. The veterinarian hesitates. Outside, a magpie sings somewhere near the clinic roof. Bright morning sound against heavy silence. Finally, she answers honestly. Then his body eventually stops fighting. Ethan looks down at Rex resting against his leg. Thin ribs rising slowly. Trust arriving in tiny wounded pieces. For the first time in years, Ethan feels afraid to lose something again. The clinic grows quieter after the morning rush begins. Reception phones ring softly in the distance. Coffee brews somewhere near the staff room. Rainwater still clings to the windows outside, turning the sunlight watery and pale across the examination room floor. Ethan remains seated beside Rex while the German shepherd sleeps against his leg in exhausted silence. Not deep sleep. Survival sleep. The kind where one sound can pull a body awake in half a second. The kitten rests nearby inside a basket lined with warm towels beneath a small heater. Every few min-trucks, it makes tiny squeaking noises that somehow keep sounding stronger. Alive enough to complain now. Ethan glances toward it and mutters quietly, "You are both expensive problems." One of the nurses passing the doorway smiles softly before disappearing down the hall. The veterinarian returns carrying 2 mugs of coffee and sets one beside Ethan. "You look like you have not slept properly in weeks." Ethan wraps both hands around the paper cup, feeling warmth return slowly to his fingers. "Years maybe." The woman leans against the counter nearby, studying Rex carefully. "He settles when you are close." Ethan looks down at the dog resting beside him. "Funny thing is I do not think he actually trusts people." "No," she says gently. "I think he trusts you." Ethan shakes his head faintly. Bad judgment on his part. The veterinarian almost smiles. Animals are usually better judges than humans. Outside the clinic window, traffic moves slowly through damp Fremantle streets. School uniforms. Trot eyes. Cyclists weaving through morning light. Normal life carrying on while something quieter unfolds inside this little room. Ethan watches Rex breathe for a long moment before speaking again. "You ever see dogs abandoned after service work?" The veterinarian's expression changes slightly. More than people realize. Ethan says nothing. She continues carefully. "Sometimes handlers leave jobs. Sometimes companies shut down. Sometimes records disappear. And the dogs?" She glances toward Rex. "Depends who decides they still matter." Silence settles heavy after that. Ethan stares at the coffee in his hands while old memories begin surfacing whether he wants them or not. Dust storms. Radio static. Heat pressing down hard enough to blur horizons. Murphy panting beside him inside transport trucks while young soldiers laugh too loudly because fear sounded worse. Ethan closes his eyes briefly. "I had one once." The veterinarian stays quiet, sensing the shape of something painful moving through the room. "German shepherd?" Ethan nods. "Best partner I ever had." He looks down at the tattoo on his forearm. Murphy frozen forever in ink and shadow. Smarter than most people I worked with. A small, tired smile flickers across his face before fading again. "He used to nudge my hand every time I forgot to eat during patrol rotations." Rex stirs faintly at the softness in Ethan's voice, but does not wake fully. The veterinarian folds her arms gently. "What happened to him?" Ethan stares toward the rain-streaked window. Cars moving outside. People who will never know certain kinds of silence exist. "Mission went wrong," he says quietly. "Extraction got messy. Everything moved too fast." His throat tightens slightly around the words. "I was told to leave him." The room becomes very still. Even the clinic sounds beyond the hallway seem farther away suddenly. Ethan rubs one hand slowly across his jaw. He was injured. Could not move properly. Rex's ears twitch faintly in his sleep beside him. Ethan keeps staring toward the window instead of the dog. Command said there was no time. His voice grows rougher now. Smaller somehow. I still hear him sometimes. The veterinarian does not interrupt. Some grief sounds sacred when spoken aloud for the first time in years. Ethan exhales slowly through his nose. "Funny thing is, everybody told me I made the right decision." He looks down at Rex then. Thin body curled against his boot. Trusting him enough to sleep. Did not feel right though. The veterinarian's eyes soften. "That is because surviving and living with yourself are different things." Ethan gives a quiet, humorless laugh at that. "Yeah." Silence settles again. Outside, a magpie lands near the clinic window and begins pecking at rainwater trapped along the ledge. Small, ordinary life continuing beneath sunlight. Rex suddenly shifts in his sleep. One paw jerks slightly against the floor. Breathing quickening. Dreaming badly. Ethan notices instantly. Without thinking, he places one steady hand gently against the dog's shoulder. "Easy, mate." Rex calms almost immediately beneath the touch. The veterinarian watches closely. You know what is strange? She says softly. Ethan glances up. What? Most traumatized animals avoid closeness after fear. She nods toward Rex. He moves toward you instead. Ethan looks down at the German Shepherd again. Maybe he is tired of being alone. The words hit deeper than intended, because the truth sitting underneath them belongs to Ethan too. The veterinarian walks quietly toward the trucker near the counter and studies the microchip records again. There is one thing I still do not understand. What? She turns the monitor slightly. His registration was reopened only 3 months ago during a liquidation audit, then marked inactive again. Ethan's eyes narrow slightly. Meaning someone looked for him recently, then closed the file without updating a contact. Rex slowly opens his eyes then, lifting his head weakly from Ethan's boot. The German Shepherd looks around the room first. Door, windows, people, then finally at Ethan. Always Ethan last now, as if checking whether he is still there before deciding the world is safe enough to breathe in. Ethan strokes behind one ear gently. Morning, sleepyhead. Rex's tail gives the faintest movement against the floor. Barely noticeable, but real. The veterinarian notices too and smiles quietly. Well, there is your answer. Ethan frowns slightly. What answer? She nods toward the tail. He wants to stay. Ethan looks down at the exhausted dog leaning weakly against him. Somewhere deep inside his chest, something long frozen shifts painfully back toward life. Dangerous thing, hope. But loneliness might be worse. By midday, the rain has completely cleared from Fremantle, leaving the streets washed clean beneath sharp winter sunlight. Inside the clinic, warm light spills through the windows and settles softly across the examination room floor, where Rex now sleeps more deeply than before. One front paw twitches occasionally in restless dreams, but his breathing has steadied. The antibiotics are beginning to work. Ethan sits nearby in an old plastic chair beside the wall, elbows resting on his knees, coffee gone cold in his hands hours ago. He has not moved much. Every time he stands, Rex wakes immediately. So Ethan stays. The kitten, now wrapped in fresh towels inside a cardboard box near the heater, has become louder with every hour. Tiny demanding squeaks echo through the room whenever food arrives. One of the nurses named Claire walks in carrying a bottle of formula and laughs quietly. That little thing has decided it owns the clinic now. Ethan watches the kitten wave its tiny paws angrily through the towel folds. Learned that from him probably. Claire glances toward Rex. You know he keeps checking the box every time the kitten cries? Ethan looks down at the German Shepherd sleeping beside his boots. Even unconscious, one ear lifts faintly at the sound. Yeah, he murmurs. He does not leave people behind. The sentence lands heavily in the quiet room. Claire notices, but wisely says nothing. She feeds the kitten gently while Ethan stares toward the sunlight outside the window. Across the street, people move in and out of the bakery carrying warm paper bags. A little girl skips along the pavement, holding her father's hand. Somewhere nearby, wind chimes ring softly from a shop awning. Simple, peaceful sounds. Ethan had forgotten places could sound like this. The veterinarian enters carrying printed records and a folder tucked beneath one arm. I made a few calls. Ethan looks up immediately, and she places the folder carefully on the counter. The company linked to Rex's chip dissolved about 18 months ago. Ethan's jaw tightens slightly. Convenient. Very. She opens the folder and points towards several old registration documents. Most records vanished after liquidation, but one former employee remembered the dog. Ethan leans forward slowly. What did they say? The veterinarian hesitates. Apparently Rex belonged to a handler named Daniel Mercer. The name means nothing to Ethan at first. Then slowly something shifts in his memory. Sandstorms. Briefings. Contractor teams rotating through shared zones overseas years ago. He frowns slightly. Australian bloke? I think so. Ethan stares at the papers. Tall. Dark hair. Always carried dog biscuits in his vest pocket. The veterinarian blinks in surprise. You knew him? Ethan exhales slowly through his nose. Not well. Crossed paths once or twice overseas. He looks down at Rex sleeping beside him. He loved that dog. Silence fills the room after that, because now the story feels wrong in a different way. Men like Daniel Mercer did not simply abandon animals they loved. Not willingly. The veterinarian folds her arms gently. The employee said Daniel disappeared during a contract operation overseas about 2 years ago. Ethan feels cold settle quietly beneath his ribs despite the warm room. Disappeared? No confirmed details. She lowers her voice slightly. Just listed missing. Rex stirs faintly on the floor at the sound of voices. His eyes open slowly, unfocused at first, then immediately searching. Door. Window. Ethan. Always Ethan. The second their eyes meet, some tension leaves the dog's body again. Ethan kneels slowly beside him. Easy, mate. Rex lifts his head weakly and presses his nose lightly against Ethan's wrist. Tiny gesture. Trust growing roots now. Ethan strokes behind one ear gently while his mind keeps circling the name Daniel Mercer. Missing handler. Retired service dog. Empty records. A dog surviving alone near the docks for weeks while still protecting a stray kitten. None of it fits abandonment cleanly anymore. Maybe he was waiting, Ethan says quietly. The veterinarian studies him. For who? Ethan looks down at Rex. For someone who never came back. The room falls silent again. Outside, sunlight shifts across the clinic floor as clouds drift slowly over the coast. Claire finishes feeding the kitten and carries the tiny bundle over carefully. Want to see something? She lowers the kitten gently onto a folded towel near Rex. The tiny gray creature immediately stumbles clumsily toward the German shepherd's chest and curls against his fur without hesitation. Rex lowers his head instinctively around it. Protective even now. Claire smiles softly. Looks like he adopted it. Ethan watches the scene quietly. Small broken things finding warmth beside something bigger and wounded. He feels that dangerous ache in his chest again. Hope trying to return where grief once settled permanently. Then suddenly Rex's ears twitch sharply toward the hallway. The German shepherd stiffens before any sound reaches Ethan. 1 second later, heavy footsteps echo faintly outside the examination room. Male voices. Unfamiliar. Rex's breathing changes immediately. Not fear exactly. Alertness sharpened by memory. Ethan notices the transformation at once. What is it? The veterinarian glances toward the door. Probably delivery staff. But Rex is already struggling upright despite the pain in his leg. Muscles tight. Eyes fixed toward the hallway. Ethan rises beside him carefully. Easy. The footsteps stop outside the room. A shadow passes beneath the frosted glass panel on the door. Then a man's voice speaks quietly from reception beyond the hallway. We are looking for a German shepherd registered under inactive contractor records. Rex freezes completely. The room goes dead silent except for the tiny ticking of the wall clock. Ethan feels the dog trembling beside him now. Not aggressive trembling. Recognition. Fear tied to memory. The veterinarian looks toward Ethan uncertainly. Do you know them? Ethan shakes his head slowly without taking his eyes off Rex. The German shepherd presses closer against his leg while staring at the door like a ghost just walked back into the world. Then the second voice speaks from the hallway, and everything inside Rex changes. The dog lets out the softest sound Ethan has heard from him yet. Not a growl. Not a bark. A wounded little whine pulled from somewhere very deep inside him. Like part of his soul still remembers somebody he has been waiting for. The little sound breaks something open inside the room. Rex stands trembling beside Ethan's leg, amber eyes fixed on the closed examination room door, while another faint whine escapes his throat. Not fear this time. Recognition wrapped in grief. Ethan feels the dog, pressing closer against him unconsciously, body shaking with exhausted anticipation. The veterinarian exchanges a quick, uncertain look with Ethan. Should I ask them to leave? Ethan keeps watching Rex carefully. The German shepherd's ears are forward now despite the pain. Listening. Hoping. Dangerous thing, hope. Ethan slowly shakes his head. Wait. Outside the frosted glass, muffled voices continue near reception. One male voice older. Calm. Australian accent with rough edges worn smooth by years. We received a tip from the dock authority this morning, the man says quietly. The microchip ping matched an old and active file. Rex's breathing quickens instantly at the sound. Ethan kneels slowly beside him. You know that voice, do you? The dog's eyes never leave the door, tail trembling once against the floor. The veterinarian moves carefully toward the hallway and opens the door halfway. A tall gray-haired man stands outside beside reception wearing a dark canvas jacket still damp from the earlier rain. Late 60s maybe. Weathered face. kind eyes carrying the heaviness of someone who has seen too many endings. Beside him stands a younger man holding paperwork and a tablet. The older man notices Rex immediately through the doorway. Everything about him stops. Completely. "Oh God," he whispers. Rex lets out another small sound and tries taking a step forward too quickly. His injured leg gives beneath him, and Ethan catches him instinctively before he falls. The older man's eyes fill instantly at the sight. Rex. The name leaves him softly, carefully, like something sacred. The German shepherd freezes for half a second after hearing it spoken that way. Then suddenly his tail moves harder against the floor. Weak but desperate. Ethan has never seen him react like this before. The older man slowly crouches near the doorway without entering fully. Smart. Respectful. Easy boy. Rex struggles upright again despite the pain, eyes locked onto the man's face now. Ethan feels the dog shaking beside him. Not fear. Emotion too large for an exhausted body. The veterinarian steps quietly aside, giving space to something none of them fully understand yet. The older man removes his glasses slowly, breathing unevenly himself now. "I cannot believe it is really him." Ethan rises carefully. "You know the handler?" The man nods faintly while never taking his eyes off Rex. "Daniel Mercer was my son." Silence hits the room like a wave. Even the clinic sounds beyond reception seem to disappear for a moment. Ethan feels Rex lean harder against his leg at the words. The younger man beside the doorway lowers the tablet quietly. The older man swallows hard before speaking again. "I am Colin Mercer." He looks toward Rex with trembling eyes. Daniel raised him from a pup. The German shepherd limps one slow step forward. Then another. Ethan stays close, but does not stop him. Colin remains kneeling near the doorway, hands visible, movements gentle. "You remember me, mate?" Rex stares at him for one long second before pressing his nose shakily into the old man's hand. Colin breaks instantly. One hand covers his mouth while tears slip down the lines of his face. "Oh, you beautiful boy." Rex closes his eyes beneath the touch, like somebody finally spoke a language he has been starving to hear again. Ethan looks away toward the window for a moment, giving the grief privacy. Outside, sunlight glows across wet streets while life continues unaware. Inside the little clinic room, one lost dog has just found the last remaining piece of his old world. Colin strokes Rex carefully along the side of his neck. No fear in the dog now. Just exhaustion and relief colliding together. "We searched for months," Colin whispers. "After Daniel disappeared overseas, the company told us Rex bolted during extraction and was presumed lost." His voice tightens painfully. "They said there was no trace." Ethan's jaw hardens slightly. "But there was." Colin nods without looking up. "Daniel loved this dog more than anything." Rex slowly lowers himself beside the old man's knees while Colin keeps one shaking hand buried gently in his fur. The veterinarian quietly closes the examination room door behind them, sealing the moment away from the busy clinic outside. Ethan watches silently as Colin reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out an old, faded photograph. Sun-bleached. Around the edges from years folded away. He hands it carefully toward Ethan. The picture shows a younger Daniel Mercer kneeling beside Rex on a dusty roadside somewhere overseas. Both of them smiling into harsh sunlight. Dog and handler press shoulder to shoulder like family. Ethan stares at it quietly. "Yeah," he murmurs. "He loved him." Colin wipes one hand roughly across his eyes. "Daniel used to say Rex was smarter than most men he worked with." Ethan almost smiles at that because he remembers saying nearly the exact same thing about Murphy years ago. Colin looks toward Ethan properly for the first time. "You are the one who found him." Ethan nods once. "At the docks." "He waited there," Colin whispers. "That is where Daniel used to bring him whenever he was home between deployments." The room goes still again. Ethan looks down at Rex. Suddenly everything makes terrible, heartbreaking sense. The harbor, the waiting, the refusal to leave. Rex was not wandering. He was returning to the last place that felt connected to someone he loved. Waiting for a man who never came back. Colin strokes the dog's fur carefully while his voice drops softer. Every morning Daniel would buy fish and chips from the same little shop near the marina. He smiles faintly through tears. Rex always stole the chips when he looked away. For the first time since Ethan met him, the German shepherd's tail gives a slightly stronger thump against the floor. Memory. Recognition. Ethan feels his throat tighten unexpectedly. The younger man finally speaks from near the doorway. Mr. Mercer runs a veterans support property outside Perth now. Rescue dogs mostly. Colin nods slowly without taking his hand off Rex. I kept hoping one day somebody would find him. He looks up toward Ethan then. Deep gratitude sitting quietly behind exhausted eyes. Thank you for not walking away from him. Ethan glances down at the tattoo on his forearm before answering. Murphy staring back beneath faded black ink. Old guilt. Old ghosts. Yeah, he says quietly. I know what happens when people do. The afternoon light turns softer by the time Ethan finally steps outside the clinic for air. Fremantle smells. Different after rain. Salt from the ocean. Warm bread drifting from the bakery across the road. Damp eucalyptus carried through the streets by slow coastal wind. Cars move lazily through puddle-streaked roads while gulls circle above the marina somewhere beyond the buildings. Ethan stands near the truck with both hands in his jacket pockets, staring at nothing for a while. Through the clinic window, he can still see Rex lying beside Colin Mercer inside the examination room. The old man has not moved far from the dog for nearly an hour. Neither of them seems willing to risk losing sight of the other again. Ethan understands that feeling more than he wants to admit. The clinic door opens behind him. Colin steps outside carrying 2 takeaway coffees. He offers one quietly toward Ethan. Figured you might need this. Ethan takes it with a faint nod. Thanks. They stand beside the truck in comfortable silence for a few moments while sunlight glows across the wet street. Colin finally exhales slowly. Daniel would have liked you. Ethan stares into the coffee cup. Did not know him well. You did enough. Ethan says nothing to that. Colin leans against the railing beside the clinic entrance. Older now. Shoulders bent slightly by grief and years. But there is warmth in him too. The kind that survives losing people and somehow still chooses kindness afterward. After Daniel disappeared, Colin says quietly, Rex vanished from the operation site before retrieval teams arrived. Months later, unconfirmed sightings placed him around freight depots and contractor yards, always moving, always avoiding capture, until the trail finally led back to Fremantle. Ethan looks over slowly. He escaped. Colin nods faintly. That is what we were told. His expression hardens briefly beneath the sadness. Truth is, those companies cared more about contracts than living things. Ethan understands immediately. Men left behind on paperwork. Dogs forgotten because nobody important signed for them anymore. He has seen entire lives disappear into silence like that. Colin looks toward the clinic window again where Rex rests beneath warm afternoon light. I used to keep Daniel's room exactly the same after he disappeared. Ethan remains quiet. Colin smiles faintly at the memory. Stupid thing to do probably. No, Ethan shakes his head once. Not stupid. The old man studies him carefully. You kept things too, did you? Ethan glances unconsciously toward the tattoo on his forearm. Murphy forever staring back beneath faded ink. Colin notices immediately, but says nothing for a while. Then quietly, that your old partner? Ethan nods. The wind moves softly through the street between them. Lost him overseas. Colin waits patiently. Could not bring him back. Ethan's voice stays calm, but thinner now somehow. Spent years telling myself there was nothing I could have done. He stares toward the harbor beyond the distant rooftops. Funny thing about guilt, though. It does not care what is logical. Colin gives a slow understanding nod. No, it does not. Silence settles around them again. Peaceful silence this time. Not empty. The clinic door opens once more, and Claire steps outside, holding the tiny gray kitten wrapped inside a towel bundle. Somebody woke up hungry again. Colin's face softens instantly. There is the little survivor. The kitten squeaks furiously at the world, while Ethan carefully takes it into his arms. Tiny body warm now. Eyes fully open. Fighting to live with every gram of strength it has. Colin chuckles quietly. Looks like Rex picked a stubborn one. Ethan glances through the clinic window toward the German Shepherd. Takes one to know one. Claire smiles. The antibiotics are helping. Rex ate a full bowl 20 min-trucks ago. Ethan feels relief hit him harder than expected. Small thing. Just a dog eating. But somehow it matters. Colin notices Ethan's expression and something thoughtful passes through the older man's eyes. You care about him already. Ethan immediately looks away toward the street. He needed help. That is not what I said. The words linger between them gently. Ethan does not answer because some truths feel dangerous when spoken aloud. Claire heads back inside after a while. leaving the two men standing quietly beneath the late afternoon sun. Colin finally clears his throat. I run a small property outside Perth now. Rescue dogs mostly. Veterans too. Ethan glances over. Yeah. Nothing fancy. Just space. Quiet. People trying to heal beside animals doing the same thing. A faint smile touches his weathered face. Turns out broken creatures are good company for each other. Ethan cannot help the small breath of laughter escaping him. Colin continues carefully. Rex would have a place there. Ethan nods slowly. He would. The old man studies him for a moment before speaking again. You would too, if you ever needed one. Ethan looks genuinely surprised by that. Colin shrugs lightly. Daniel used to say you can tell who a person really is by how they treat frightened dogs. He gestures gently toward the clinic behind them. You stayed. Ethan stares down at the kitten resting in his arms. Tiny heartbeat fluttering against the towel. Maybe I was tired of leaving. The words come out quieter than intended. Colin hears them anyway. Neither man speaks after that. They simply stand together beneath the soft Perth sunlight, while traffic moves lazily through the wet streets and seabirds cry somewhere over the coast. Inside the clinic, Rex slowly rises from the examination room floor and limps carefully toward the front window. His movements are still stiff with pain, but steadier now. He stops behind the glass and looks outside directly at Ethan. The second their eyes meet, the German shepherd's tail gives one slow, gentle wag. Not desperate anymore. Not frightened. Just certain. Ethan feels something shift deep inside his chest again. Not guilt this time. Something warmer. Something he barely remembers how to carry. Colin notices the look passing across Ethan's face and smiles softly to himself. You know, he says quietly, sometimes the ones we rescue end up rescuing us back. Ethan keeps looking at Rex through the clinic window while the dog stands there beneath warm afternoon light, no longer waiting for ghosts to return. 3 months later, winter begins loosening its grip on the Western Australian coast. The mornings arrive brighter now, warmer. Sunlight stretches longer across the paddocks outside Perth where Colin Mercer's rescue property sits between rows of gum. Trees and open fields silvered by early dew. The place is quiet in the kindest way. No traffic, no sirens. Just wind moving softly through grass and the distant sound of dogs waking with the day. Ethan stands near the fence line holding a mug of coffee while pale sunlight spills across the property in slow golden waves. He sleeps better here. Not perfectly, but better. Some nights he still wakes from old memories with his chest tight and breathing shallow. But now there is usually a German shepherd already waiting outside his cabin door before dawn arrives. Rex learned the routine quickly. Every morning at 6:15, he limps across the gravel path and sits quietly beside Ethan's porch steps until the door opens. Never barking, never scratching, just waiting, patient the way loyal things wait. Ethan glances across the yard now and spots Rex near the training paddock beneath the gum trees. Stronger than before, health returning slowly to his frame. The limp still appears on colder mornings, but the infection is gone and the fear behind his eyes has softened into caution instead of panic. Beside him, the tiny gray kitten from the docks now races wildly through the grass with impossible confidence. Colin named her Lucky. Rex tolerates her climbing over him with the exhausted patience of an older brother who has accepted defeat. Ethan cannot help smiling at the sight. Funny thing about healing. Sometimes it arrives so quietly you do not notice until one morning you catch yourself smiling again. Behind him, the screen door creaks open. Colin steps onto the porch carrying a feed bucket beneath one arm. You planning on helping today or just admiring scenery? Ethan takes a sip of coffee, still deciding. Colin snorts softly. Lazy guy. They walk together across the property while sunlight warms the damp earth beneath their boots. Rescue dogs bark happily near the far kennels. Some missing legs. Some old. Some nervous around loud sounds. Every animal here carries a history nobody fully sees anymore. Ethan understands that better than most. Rex notices them approaching and immediately rises from the grass. Tail moving once. Calm now. Certain. The German shepherd walks beside Ethan naturally these days without needing commands or hesitation. Just close enough that their shoulders nearly brush sometimes. Ethan reaches down absent-mindedly to scratch behind one ear. Rex leans briefly into the touch before continuing forward beside him. Small thing. But once, this dog flinched from human hands. Colin notices too. You know, he says quietly. Daniel used to say trust is harder to rebuild than bone. Ethan looks down at Rex. Yeah. They stop near the paddock fence where Lucky the kitten is now attacking Leaves twice her size with dramatic determination. Rex watches her carefully like a bodyguard assigned against his will. Ethan shakes his head. Still babysitting. Colin smiles softly. Some creatures need somebody to protect. The wind shifts across the fields carrying the smell of eucalyptus and distant ocean air. Somewhere overhead, cockatoos scream across the bright blue sky. Peaceful sounds. Real sounds. Not memories. Ethan leans against the fence for a while watching Rex move through the grass beneath the morning sun. No longer waiting at harbor docks for ghosts to return. No longer sleeping beneath rusted forklifts in the rain. Just alive. Present. Home. A small voice suddenly calls from near the front gate. Mr. Ethan? He turns to see a little boy standing beside his mother near the driveway entrance. Maybe 7 years old. Freckles. Missing front tooth. The boy points excitedly toward Rex. Can I pat the big dog? Ethan glances toward Rex first. Always Rex first. The German shepherd studies the child calmly before sitting down in the grass. Relaxed posture. Safe posture. Ethan nods. Slowly, mate. The little boy walks over carefully while his mother watches nervously from behind the gate. Rex remains perfectly still as the tiny hand touches the fur behind his ears. Tail thump. Gentle. The boy grins brightly. He is beautiful. Ethan looks down at the dog beside him. Sunlight catching amber eyes that once held nothing except exhaustion and fear. Yeah, he says quietly. He is. The boy keeps patting Rex softly before asking the question children always ask with complete honesty. Did you save him? Ethan opens his mouth to answer but stops, because the truth feels different now. He looks at Rex sitting calmly in the grass beside Lucky and the old rescue property, and the morning sunlight warming everything gold. Then he thinks about the harbor, the waiting, the silence he carried for years after Murphy, the nights he stopped believing anything good still waited ahead of him. Rex looks up at Ethan then. Calm eyes now. Steady eyes. Home eyes. Ethan finally smiles faintly and answers the boy softly. I think we probably saved each other. The child nods like that makes perfect sense. Children understand certain truths adults complicate. The mother calls him back toward the gate after a moment, and the little boy waves goodbye to Rex enthusiastically before leaving. The German shepherd watches them disappear down the gravel road before quietly returning to Ethan's side without being asked. Ethan rests one hand gently against the dog's neck while wind moves through the gum trees overhead in long whispering waves. Somewhere across the property, Colin begins laughing at Lucky chasing chickens twice her size. Rex lets out a soft, tired sigh beside Ethan's leg and settles into the grass beneath the morning sun. Safe enough to rest now. Safe enough to stop waiting. Ethan stares across the open fields for a long moment while sunlight warms his face and the world finally feels quiet in the right way again. Then softly, almost too softly to hear, he says, "Good boy, Rex." The name comes out clean this time. Rex lifts his head and gently presses closer against him. Somewhere inside Ethan, the name he did not say hurts less. And maybe that is why these stories stay with us. Loyalty is not loud. Healing is not instant. And sometimes the life we save becomes the reason we keep going.